Imagine this. You spend your whole life trying to be what others expect. You shape your words, your choices, even your dreams, just to avoid judgment. You chase approval. You fear rejection. You hold your breath, waiting for the world to tell you you're allowed to be real. And one day, you wake up exhausted. Not from life, but from constantly performing in a role you never chose. It's like living by an instruction manual that you never wrote. Michel de Montaigne, a philosopher centuries ahead of his time, saw this for what it was, a quiet tragedy. He asked, why do we let others define our worth? Why do we fear imperfection? Why do we cling so tightly to things we were never meant to control? He believed that real freedom doesn't come from winning every battle, but from finally letting go of the need to fight. But what if the moment you stop caring is the moment your life finally begins to make sense? That's what we're here to explore. Part 1. When caring too much is what's holding you back. We're told that caring is a good thing, and it is, until it starts to cost you your peace. The truth is, many of us don't live our lives. We perform them. We say yes when we mean no. We follow paths we never chose. We shape our identities around what we think others want us to be. Why? Because deep down, we believe, if I make everyone happy, I'll finally feel worthy. But here's what really happens. You live in quiet anxiety. You fear judgment, even when no one's watching. You lose sleep over things that were never yours to carry. You wake up tired, not because you've done too much, but because you've cared too hard about things that don't actually matter. And today, it's worse than ever. Social media amplifies the noise. You compare your behind the scenes to someone else's highlight reel. You feel like you're falling behind, not because you are, but because you're measuring your worth on someone else's timeline. It becomes a cycle. I'll be okay when they approve, when they like me, when I'm seen, validated, celebrated. But those moments are brief. The applause fades. The post gets buried. And you're back to chasing validation like a finish line that keeps moving. Here's the hard truth. You're chasing someone else's destination, while holding a map that doesn't even fit your terrain, and then wondering why the road doesn't lead to happiness. Montaigne saw this centuries ago. He wrote not for fame, but for clarity. He believed the more we shape ourselves around others' expectations, the further we drift from who we truly are. He asked, why are we so quick to betray ourselves, just to fit into a mold that was never made for us? It's not just exhausting, it's unsustainable. So what happens when you stop trying to please the world? That's where the paradox begins. Because when you stop chasing validation, you start becoming real. And when you become real, life begins to meet you, not the mask you were wearing. Part 2. The art of letting go. Not indifference, but awareness. When people hear the phrase, stop caring, they often misunderstand it. They imagine giving up, becoming cold, emotionless, detached from everything and everyone. But that's not what Montaigne meant. And it's not what true freedom looks like. There's a difference between detachment and indifference. Indifference says, nothing matters. Detachment says, only the right things matter. Indifference numbs you. Detachment awakens you. It's the difference between shutting down emotionally and choosing not to let unnecessary emotion run your life. When you practice true detachment, you still care. You still love, you still feel, you still show up. But you do it from a place of clarity, not fear. You're no longer driven by the need to be approved of or paralyzed by the fear of rejection. You no longer obsess over how you're being perceived or try to control every outcome. And that's what Montaigne understood so well. He believed that real wisdom was learning to release what doesn't serve you. Not because you don't care, but because you finally do. About the right things. Letting go doesn't mean you become passive. It means you become present. You stop mistaking passing opinions as permanent reflections of your identity. You stop trying to perfect a life that was never meant to be perfect. You stop assigning meaning to things that were never yours to hold. And something amazing happens. You get your energy back. You feel lighter, more focused, more at peace, because you're no longer leaking power into every little fear, every passing thought, every fleeting judgment. You stop dancing to the chaos and start hearing your own rhythm. Montaigne's brilliance wasn't just in his ideas. It was in how deeply he observed the human condition. He saw that we suffer not because life is cruel, but because we refuse to let go of the stories that weigh us down. And this detachment doesn't push life away. It actually brings it closer. When you stop needing life to be a certain way, you can finally experience it as it is. And that's where real peace begins. Part 3. Confidence is what follows when you let go. Think about the most magnetic, confident people you've ever met. Were they the loudest? The ones constantly proving themselves? Always chasing approval? Always needing to be right? Probably not. True confidence is rarely loud. In fact, it's quiet, it's calm. It doesn't announce itself. It simply walks in and changes the energy of the room. Confidence isn't a goal you reach. It's the residue that remains when fear is gone. When you stop caring about being judged, you start acting from truth, not from fear. When you stop obsessing over how you're perceived, you stop filtering everything you say. When you let go of the need to prove something, you show up as someone worth listening to. Montaigne understood this centuries ago. He knew that freedom from external pressure creates inner gravity, the kind of presence people feel without words. It's like this. Some people walk into a room and say, "I'm important." Others walk in, and everyone just feels it. Because real confidence doesn't need to say, "I'm okay." It lives as okay. It doesn't resist silence. It doesn't over-explain. It just is. Confidence, you might say, is a quiet certainty, a kind of stillness that makes other people lean in. This is the paradox. When you stop trying to impress, people start to respect. The moment you stop fearing rejection, you become more accepted. Why? Because people are drawn to those who are at peace with themselves. Letting go of judgment doesn't make you careless. It makes you clear. You stop shrinking yourself to avoid criticism. You stop performing your worth. You start walking like someone who belongs, not because they're perfect, but because they've stopped asking for permission. That kind of grounded energy, that's confidence. And that quiet strength, it grows the moment you stop explaining yourself. And what comes next isn't just internal freedom. It's a whole new way of living. One where you stop chasing control and start trusting the flow of life. Part 4. Control is an illusion. Let it flow. Here's something most of us don't realize until it's too late. Anxiety often isn't about what's happening. It's about trying to control what we can't. We micromanage our days, our futures, our relationships, believing that if we can just hold everything tightly enough, we'll be safe. We'll be okay. But Montaigne, centuries before modern psychology, saw through this illusion. He observed that the more we try to force life into predictability, the more life pushes back. And the more we grip, the more we suffer. Psychologists today call this the control fallacy. The belief that if we just try hard enough, plan long enough, worry intensely enough, we can make everything turn out the way we want. But that belief doesn't lead to security. It leads to exhaustion. You're constantly anticipating what could go wrong. You're overwhelmed before anything has even happened. You're living in a state of mental overdrive. Not because life is chaotic, but because you're terrified of not being in control. The result? You miss the present moment. You delay joy. You confuse preparation with paralysis. Carl Jung warned us of this dynamic. He said, "What you resist not only persists, but grows." When we fight reality, we make it heavier. When we accept it, we make room for movement. And the Stoics knew this too. Epictetus wrote, "Some things are in our control, and some things are not." Wisdom, he said, is knowing the difference. Montaigne lived this truth. He believed that peace isn't found in forcing outcomes, but in flowing with them. Not in predicting life, but in partnering with its uncertainty. Let's make this real. Think of how much stress comes from trying to avoid every mistake, anticipating rejection before it even happens, needing people to react exactly how you want, obsessing over outcomes that aren't even here yet. What if you let it go? What if you stopped tightening your grip and started loosening your expectations? Because the tighter your grip, the more life swerves out of your hands. And when you stop gripping the wheel so tightly, life starts to drive you somewhere better. Letting go isn't passive, it's powerful. And as we'll see next, it not only brings peace within you, it transforms how you connect with everyone around you. Part 5. Letting go creates deeper connection, not distance. We often think that closeness means control, that love is proven by how tightly we hold on. But Montaigne, with his quiet brilliance, saw something deeper. Real connection begins the moment we stop trying to control each other. Because the truth is, you can't force someone to understand you, to stay with you, or to love you the way you want to be loved. And the more you try, the more they pull away. We've all felt it. The pressure in relationships, the unspoken need for constant reassurance, the fear that if we don't hold tight enough, we'll be left behind. But here's the paradox. The more space you give someone, the more freely they return. Love isn't possession, it's permission. A wide, open field, not a cage. Real love doesn't demand ownership, it dares you to trust. Imagine two people standing in an open field. One says, "I trust you to walk with me, not because you have to, but because you choose to." That's what detachment in relationships looks like. Not withdrawal, not coldness, acceptance. When you stop trying to change someone, they feel safer to show you who they truly are. And when people feel seen instead of managed, they lean in, they open up, they stay longer. Montaigne understood this long before attachment theory was invented. He noticed that the less we cling to people, the more we invite genuine closeness. This applies to romantic love, friendships, even family. Because what ruins most relationships isn't a lack of love. It's the presence of fear. Fear of losing, of not being enough, of being alone. But when you let go of those fears, something changes. You stop needing constant reassurance. You stop chasing. You begin to relax into love. And in that space, love deepens. So if detachment brings us closer to others, it can also bring us closer to ourselves. Because now the question becomes, what happens when we stop controlling not just others, but also our own identity? That's what we'll explore next. Part 6. Shift your mindset. Change your life. There comes a moment, a quiet, powerful shift. When you stop asking, "How can I be accepted?" and start asking, "What no longer deserves my energy?" That's the moment you begin to live honestly. Michel de Montaigne believed that freedom doesn't come from gaining more, but from carrying less. Less fear, less people-pleasing, less pressure to perform a version of yourself that was never real to begin with. So ask yourself, what weight are you still dragging, just because someone once handed it to you? Imagine walking through life with a backpack, but instead of tools, it's filled with old expectations, outdated beliefs, other people's opinions, regrets from years ago, fear of disappointing someone long gone. You're not tired from the road. You're tired from the weight you were never meant to carry on it. Letting go isn't giving up. It's choosing to stop dragging weight you were never meant to hold. And Montaigne reminds us, let go of what doesn't serve you. So what drains you every day? The need to explain yourself, the guilt from past choices, the habit of overthinking every conversation, the fear of being misunderstood, the silence you keep to avoid judgment. These are all energy leaks, tiny holes in your spirit that slowly bleed your peace. When you shift your mindset from, "How can I be enough?" to, "What am I still carrying that I was never meant to hold?" everything changes. You make room to breathe, room to move, room to finally be you, without armor, without apology. Because peace isn't found by adding more, it's found in the release. But if letting go feels this good, why do we still resist it? Why do we still cling to what hurts us? That's the question we'll answer next. Because the reason is deeper than you think. Part 7. Why letting go feels so hard, and why it sets you free. Letting go sounds simple, but it's one of the hardest things we'll ever do. Why? Because control feels safe. And when we release control, we fear we're also releasing who we are. It's not just fear of uncertainty, it's fear of identity collapse. We think, if I stop trying, who am I? If I don't care what they think, do I still matter? If I stop holding everything together, will it all fall apart? But here's the truth Montaigne knew. What we cling to the hardest is often the very thing that's holding us back. And more often than not, what we're clinging to isn't even real. It's a false self. The version of you built to survive, to be accepted, to be loved. But survival mode isn't meant to be your permanent home. That version of you was useful, but it's not you. To become who you truly are, the false self must dissolve. Psychologists call this ego death. Spiritual traditions call it awakening. Montaigne simply lived it, by questioning everything that didn't feel aligned with his soul. The tighter you clutch, the faster it slips away. The moment you release, freedom rushes in. It's a paradox. The more you fear letting go, the more you delay your own liberation. We hold on, thinking it protects us, but it actually imprisons us. You are not your guilt. You are not your perfectionism. You are not your fear. You are not the version of you created for others. You are something deeper, wider, still, real. And to meet that self, you must first mourn who you thought you were, before becoming who you truly are. And now we reach the final truth. The reason everything starts falling into place, not when you gain more, but when you let go of what you're not. So you can remember who you've always been. When you stop caring, life starts to move. The most beautiful moments in life rarely happen when we force them. They arrive when we stop gripping so tightly, when we allow space for things to unfold. Michel de Montaigne believed that life isn't something to conquer, it's something to dance with. Wisdom, he suggested, isn't in controlling life, it's in flowing with it. Think about it. The artist creates their masterpiece, not when obsessed with outcome, but when fully present in the process. The entrepreneur succeeds, not by fearing failure, but by embracing risk as a path to growth. And relationships? They thrive not under pressure, but in the presence of trust, space, and honesty. Life is jazz, improvised, imperfect, alive. And the more you try to control every note, the less soul it carries. But when you let go, you find your rhythm. You don't have to prove anything. You don't have to fix everything. You just have to release what no longer serves you and watch life begin to move on its own. If this spoke to you, comment below. I let go of what no longer serves me. Subscribe for more timeless wisdom. Because sometimes one shift in mindset changes everything.